Johnny, what up?
What up, guys? How are you?
What's happening?
What did you think of Joe Whitt yesterday? His attitude, just kind of his presence, his mindset, and the passion with which he kind of delivers everything.
Juice and energy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I think, obviously when they hire Dan Quinn, talk about energy with the coach. But that energy has to come from a lot of places too. You can't just have one head coach be energetic and then expect you to have an energetic team. You've got to get other people who can do that. Joe Whitt certainly provides that. Now, we don't know what kind of defensive coordinator he's going to be because he hasn't been in that role. This is his, first shot. And so we'll see what he does with that. But he says all those things, right? And so what we're hearing now is all good stuff. And anytime you have a change in staff, you're always going to hear, certain phrase words. You're going to be more aggressive. You're going to have more of this, more of that. But it does seem like when the players talk about this stuff and when you watch it on the field, like it's playing, you can see it playing out that way. And the fast and physical, and it's funny because I talked to somebody, a reporter in Dallas who's like, has he talked about being fast and physical yet? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, so like there are certain buzz phrases that they're all going to use. And what defensive coach doesn't want to be fast and physical? The question is, can you get your group to play that way? And so everybody wants that because that's what defense is. But can you get them to play that way? And I think the big thing that you hear from Quinn and Joe Whitt is, getting these guys. How do you get these guys to play fast? And it is not by overloading them with rules, et cetera. If you see this formation, it's automatically this. And you're going to have some of that, obviously, because you can't just stay in one coverage the whole time. But at a certain point within the offensive movements, whatever, you're going to stick to a rule, right? And so, that allows you to play faster and therefore more physical. So I think that's what it's going to be. I think that's where you get that. I think it's the energy they provide with it. I think guys like going to work, and Ken Norton has that, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's not the only guy who has it. And I think that's key because if you have it in your position groups, and the energy does not mean doesn't mean just rah rah and this that. It's it's the passion with which you approach the meetings and on the field. How active and engaged are you, et cetera. It's all of that. And I think you see that not just from Quinn and Whitt, but from a lot of guys on this staff.
Like you've been around John a long time, and you've seen some false.
Everybody always says that now.
But John, I've been knowing you for a long time, brother. So you've been around a long time.
Yes, I have. I'm not going to.
But what I'm saying,
I guess I'm at that stage where everyone's like, everything's perfect. Well, you've been here forever, man. So, anyways, let's go.
What I'm saying is, you've seen some of these coaches.
Keim remembers when they used to practice on the
chatter. Doesn't it seem like these guys, this is just who they are? Is their personality?
Yeah.
No, this is the way Ken played.
Right, exactly. And that's my point, is that because this, if you go out there and try to fool guys with energy and all that, they're going to see through it. They know that's not who you are. I'll say this, Ryan Kerrigan, I wouldn't describe him as high energy.
Yeah.
That's not what they were expecting from him. That's not. And so that's okay. But if he went out there and tried to do that, it wouldn't be him. His thing is approach, detail, taking care of every little habit, every little detail, et cetera. That's what you get from him, right? So if he tried to change that, guys would see through that. Don't change it. That's worked for him, and it's why he's in this position, right? So, but Ken Norton, energy, big time. You need those guys. So, yes, it's who they are. And it's funny because, when you talk to people out there, I think they have 13 former players on this staff. That's a lot.
Yeah. Right.
And I think when you get that, there's a natural energy that occurs with those kind of guys. And again, the energy can be preparation, and habits. But it's also just the passion, I think, that you bring for what you're doing and trying to get across. So yeah, it's more than just that. And like I said, I think a lot of it though comes down to, are you overloading your guys with information or not? Because if you are, then it's hard to play as fast and as physical as you want.
Mm-hmm. And I think you saw that with some of these defensive breakdowns in the back end over the last few seasons. I'm talking with John Keim here from ESPN.com. Follow him on X and Instagram at John_Keim. Keim, Keim. It is. I always say the locker room knows, right? Like if you got a quarterback situation,
Right.
the locker room knows. If a player's dogging it, the locker room knows. Like those guys in that room know exactly what the hell is going on. And
Yes.
when a coach is faking it, they know. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's not hard to figure that out. And
No.
I think with this crew, at least right now, energy and messaging late in a bad season might fall on deaf ears, but right now there's real energy and you could see it. You could see it working. Andrew Wiley had a really interesting line yesterday when he talked about, I've been through roster turnover before. Like when we won in Kansas City, you lose a lot of guys after you win a
Every
Super
year.
Bowl. And he said one thing that stands out to him is the amount of player leadership. And I was like, well, is there not always player leadership? He's like, yeah, usually, but this early in the year for new guys
Right.
to kind of be asserting themselves, that stands out. And I think some of that comes from the coaching staff pushing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and also seeking those kind of guys out. I think they knew what they needed and what they wanted, and they sought those players out. And I mean, shoot, again, Bobby Wagner's at the top of the class of that one, but you brought in other guys who are at certain points of their careers who are able to provide that as well. And so, yes, I think, you're right. I think that it's what the coaches wanted, but it's also what they sought because they knew what they wanted. So, yeah.
Specific to the Jamin Davis conversation, how much can they get from him? Like, how much do you buy into this pass rushing role? Is that I don't want to say salvageable because it's not like he's been terrible. He's underperformed the draft position for sure.
Right.
And they've already decided not to pick up the option, which tells you plenty. But what can be different this year with Jamin and the Commanders?
Well, it's also not picking up the option, but also then signing 2 linebackers as well.
And drafting one.
And drafting one. And so I think right now with him, it's like you're trying to see what else can he do? Can he help you? And I think, like one of the things that Joe Whitt talked about, and it's funny because like Greg Williams has talked about this a lot too, like, hey, we don't have 11 stars. We have 17 or 18 stars.
Mm-hmm.
But that flows from, can you find roles for each of these guys and packages for each of these guys? And that's one thing, again, Williams would always talk about that. He'd tell you, we have 22 packages. Okay. And they probably did. They tried to find, what does this guy do? And what can he offer you? And can you find packages to put this in? I think that's what you're trying to do with Jamin. Can he do that? And, when you talk to people who, know his game well or have watched him, that I think there's a belief like he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, and he has good length for an edge guy. Can he, you talk to some people like you don't know. And like, can he convert speed to power? Like Montez Sweat was really good there. Can he do that? Like little things like that. And those are things that make you a really good rusher, or is he just going to try and win around the edge? Right. So we don't know enough yet to know like what can he be because we just haven't seen it. But I think it does highlight that they're trying to find something for him to see, can you maximize this guy this way? Can you provide another look by having this guy rush as an edge rusher? And I think it speaks to what they've been trying to do, with guys. And like, if this guy, the position, I didn't say position versatility, but just, is there a way, positionless football, positionless, right. Positionless football. Right. And I think, can he be a guy that can help you? Because I think he can also, like, they didn't blitz a lot with him in the past. I think it was like 3, maybe 4 times a game he'd rush, something like that. So can you get more out of him in that area? And I think you probably can. So, and even yesterday watching him rush sometimes, like he's rushing, but it's off the edge, but it's from a stand-up position. Now, he did some of that last year as well. So it's not so I think you just try to see, can he help you in those situations and create more of a pass rush? Because that's one of the things that these guys want to do. So, it's what you should do with players, man. You've got a guy the guy's got ability. We've seen that. And you're right. Like, it's not like he's been horrible by any means. So,
there's been flashes too.
Yeah, there have been. And there are games where he's been pretty good. For people who you want to watch it, there are definitely games, but he's got the ability. So can you tap into that in some way? And so I think it's like we know Frankie Louvu what he can do as a stand-up rusher in the role he's in, and what Bob Wagner can do. So this just gives you maybe more options at that position.
Yeah.
Those coaches are basically doing what, if you can just go get a guy to college and put him in a position and don't do anything with him, then you don't need as many coaches. But the fact that we have all these coaches, they're doing what their job entails. You're supposed to take a guy and take him to the highs of his ability, show him some things that help him out. This group is trying to figure that out and do it with people. Let's be real. Ron and Jack did not do that. Ron and Jack felt that their system and their scheme was going to be what makes the guys better. No, you got to still take those guys a little farther along. And they have to do it themselves as well. But if the person ahead of you constantly puts you on the field and you're not reaching your full potential, then guess what? They're telling you that you're okay, right?
Yeah, and I also like what I liked in Dallas too, and you'd watch that defense the last couple of years, is you'd have Micah Parsons, you have a few good pass rushers, and yet they were still trying to move him around. It wasn't a line up here and just go win. And like I always liked that, and I felt like that was certainly something they didn't do enough of here, because you had, you got these 4 number 1 picks as pass rushers, go get them. And it's, and it can be really hard to win that way. And, time and again. Right. And so I think like that just makes it difficult. So I think that's one of the things I always liked about that defense. Other defenses are like that too. And when you have Micah Parsons, there are certain things can look a lot better, but it's also the way you used him. If he had just been a stand-up linebacker, is he going to be have this exact same impact? Well, probably not. He should be really good because he's good, but you find a way to use him the right way, and that can be that can be difficult. But I do think like this is the time of the year now. You can't abandon like Jamin Davis as an edge possibility. And again, this would be in situational pass rushes because he's still working as a linebacker when they're in the other situations, but a situational edge rusher. But you got to see in camp, can he do it?
Right.
That's what you have to, because like this
against
it's hard to measure
contact.
Against you can't measure D-line, O-line until you get the pads on.
Seeing it right now, he's fast and explosive, but until Cole Turner, dude, I'm at a point with Cole Turner where he looks good in practice. Until I see it in a game, it's just harder and harder to believe it. I want to switch gears though. Jaden, we've now got to see a little bit of him. Like we have a little bit of a body of work. Next week we'll get, I think, 2 straight days of it. What do you think of the young man so far?
I mean, I think what they liked throughout the process is what you're seeing on the field right now. I mean, there's obviously, he is not a finished product. He's got a lot to learn, but I do think you see some of those traits, right? You see some of the accuracy and the touch with the arm. You see, like, there are times that I know, like, I'm going to talk about poise and patience in the pocket. Now, easier to have that when you're not being rushed, but we also saw him do this at LSU, right? And even when the pocket at times was collapsing, you'd see him react with poise. And so I think you see that. And then, there was a play yesterday that I liked where defenses, the safeties are giving him a different look pre-snap. He sees it, signals, and then, hard count, gets rid of the ball to, I think it was Ben Sinnott on just a little hitch, but it was like it was the right play, and he handled it right. He saw the movement, he saw what they're trying to do. He tried to get them to reveal what they were going to do a little bit earlier, and then he makes the right decision. Like, those things are good. And then, other times you're going to see some indecision. You can't, again, dude's not perfect, So not at this point. You can't expect him to be. There's a lot that he's going to experience all year.
Right.
And
so much of it is,
that's okay.
Right.
That's okay. Like, but the stuff that he's showing now, the other thing, JP, it's also not what we're seeing, it's what we're hearing. I think that's
from other players too has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah. And that to me is what stands out, because like sometimes you might hear with some guys, like they might say it. It's like, do you believe that, or is he just saying it? but we're hearing it from different guys. And like watching the body language when you discuss him is also something to me that's revealing.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether it's the smile they get on their face when they're talking about it. So like those are the things that to me jump out, because if you're doing that stuff behind the scenes, then I think you're going to show the progress on the field. I think that's such a huge key for a quarterback, and that's what you're hearing. Like, to me, if I'm Washington, like that's what pleases me most, because you already know the talent.
Right. I tell you,
the locker room knows.
Locker room
knows.
One play,
and that's why it's funny, because like, and this, not to veer off this, but like people would talk about like, DC media creating quarterback controversies in the past. Like those things come from the locker room, because those guys know.
Locker room knows. One play that I made a point of talking about yesterday, because so much of it has been so good. Like, he had a total rookie brain fart yesterday when they were running 11 on 11.
Yeah.
And it looked like they were trying to set up a bubble to the left side. The defense read it completely. He still threw it, and I think it would have been a backwards pass, so I think it's a fumble immediately. I think it was 92, got his hand on it, knocked it backwards. So that play is immediately a turnover and was set up to be a fumble 6. And you can't throw that. That's got to be in the dirt, and that's the stuff he's also learning, which is invaluable.
And I think that's a great point. I'm kicking myself because I forgot to mention that play when I talked about practice, because it was but I would say this. I didn't have a great angle on it, so I couldn't even tell. Like, I was back in the end zone.
Right.
So, like,
I was up elevated sitting with the DOC.
All right, so that's a great angle of it, but you're right. And those are things that you learn. But like, there was another play later where I think he got a little bit fooled by the coverage or saw something, and it's like, wasn't quite sure how to handle it. But that's what this stuff is
right.
for.
That's what right now is for.
If you're doing all the other stuff, you will learn from that play.
Totally.
So, like,
and he's going to watch the tape of that play. Probably already has.
1,000%. And so, like, I'm like, that's why I actually like. There was 1 or 2 years where one of my favorite things, it's years ago, was like talking to the rookies, like, give me a play that you learned something from. And like hearing what they learned from and why and what they learned, like, I'm fascinated by that, because like that's how you grow. Totally. And so like, I'll be curious to see when he has certain situations next time that's somewhat like that, or maybe even during the season we see it and you can flashback like, oh, you learned it back in May or June or whatever it was. So
John, we got a boogie real quick.
Right,
give me your finals prediction.
Oh, I hate to say Boston, but I think it'll be. They have so many scores.
Celtics in 5, 6, 7.
I'll say 6. I'll go 6 or 7. They'll finally face a team that's fully healthy. Yeah. But I do think they have a lot of scores. It's so hard to defend them.